Hello, listeners and participants from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And here at Gold Learning, our preparations for the upcoming Gold Midwifery Online Conference of 2020 are in full swing. And what we like to do before the conference is get together with our speakers, get to know them a little bit, and introduce them to our audience and our listeners here at Gold. And with me today is a speaker from our nutrition lecture pack, Swati Scott. Welcome, Swati.
Thank you. Hello.
It is so lovely to have you here with us today.
And it is for me as well.
So, Swati, you are a dietitian, right? And you
Yep.
focus extensively on maternal infant health and nutrition. So tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us about your work and how
Okay.
you became a dietitian and how it all came to pass that this is a topic of interest for you.
Well, I won't go as far back as when I was entering university and I took a course and I was actually headed to pharmacy, but then I took a course that was just amazing and I thought, oh, heal with food. That's what I like. So that took me into the stream of studies in dietetics and that's a grueling study. Most of dietitians will tell you that it's at least 5 years, roughly. And so I embarked on that, started doing work in that, and I was able to work in several different areas that were not maternal health. Because had not gone through the experience myself, I did not feel comfortable to discuss or work with clients regarding perinatal years. And then, of course, I had a baby, and that
Mhm.
changed everything. I think that was the beginning of my changing streams in my career towards maternal infant health.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that was about 23 years ago. I, again, it hurts to say that, but anyway, yes, my oldest is not turned 22, and I have, just because the more you learn, the more passionate you become, the more
Right.
you want to keep going. And around the same time, I started working in public health. Public health has always been my first interest. So I worked with mothers and babies in vulnerable programs. And in Canada, we have the Canada Prenatal Nutrition Program and various versions of that. So I did start working in those programs, but alongside, I was starting to get involved with more lactation related issues, having gone through things myself as a mom.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
was the beginning. And after I had been working in a couple of programs, the prenatal programs, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, asked me why I was in an LC because I was doing a lot of talking about breastfeeding all the time. And I thought it was a natural fit for a dietitian to talk about breastfeeding and breast milk and all that sort of stuff. So that's where I started looking at pursuing further certification for getting my IBCLC. And I was very fortunate to have some great mentors around me who helped me through the process. And when you write that first exam, just like sweat tears, you know. And so I came out of that, and since then I've been doing some teaching, and I've
Mhm.
been doing work. I continued to work in Best Babies type or prenatal programs, and of late I've been doing more speaking engagements around nutrition and role that nutrition plays in the perinatal years. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you're getting the workout.
Yes.
When you were speaking about your how you became a dietitian and that one class you took in college that
Yes.
changed everything for you,
Yes.
when you learned about healing, how food can, the healing properties of
Yes.
food, and that was, drew you in, and the
Yes.
grueling training then you got. One thing that came to my mind when the moment you said that was like, how come our physicians in general, doctors, don't get that much training on it, right? They get very little training
Yes.
on
Yes.
this.
Yes.
What
Yes,
are your
they do.
thoughts?
Well, I could talk about that for a whole day, but I will keep it short and say that, you know, for me, nutrition is the lowest hanging fruit. And having been in the
Mm,
profession for more than 20 years, I am still seeing that it is not seen as the lowest hanging fruit. The
yeah.
economic benefits that we can reap from good nutrition are so big, but yet they're the least addressed. If we started,
Hmm.
I truly believe that if we started to address nutrition in all of the ages and stages from birth to death, we would have
Right.
such better outcomes. We would have such better quality of life, and we would have just that much more of a healthy population around the world, despite all the challenges that we're facing. But sadly,
Hmm.
the health industry is not paying attention. We're trying to solve symptom problems and
Right.
emergency
Mhm.
room problems and the time issue. I mean around the world, I don't know what it's like, but at least in Canada, we don't have that much time with our doctors. It's like one problem per
Right.
visit and things like that, right? And so I
Hmm.
think we need to bring together a team approach to this process. And I can tell you that nutrition is always the last one on the block to join,
Mm.
which is unfortunate. If we
And
started with that, we could solve a lot of
yes.
problems.
A lot of problems, yeah. And that's why we need people like you, Swati, who bring out the good, share the news and bring out share the
Yeah.
word and bring out information to everyone in
Yes.
there. So I have a question for you. When you're dealing, you said you're dealing with a pregnant population with what do you see? What do you hear a lot that pregnant women or pregnant people struggle the most with when it comes to nutrition?
Well, part of the thing is that I tend my working population is a bit skewed in that most of them are vulnerable because of
Mm.
poverty or their circumstances, right? But hands
Hmm.
down, you know, they want to do the best they can during their pregnant state. And they know people have told them they should eat well, but they don't
Hmm.
have the tools. And sometimes, actually, not sometimes, a lot of the time, it's the lifestyle that we're leading today that gets in the way,
Mm.
right? So I think
Yeah.
if we can give them some tools to incorporate different things around healthy eating that are not
Hmm.
onerous, because I get that a lot in the sense that, oh, it takes too much time, or I don't have the equipment, or I don't have anything. Where do I start?
Yeah.
And so we need to give them the tools, and the tools are there. But part of the problem is that we're not putting it in the schools. And part of that is that
Mm.
we're talking about it kind of sporadically during their prenatal phase, right? It really should start
Right.
in the
Right.
preconception phase, but
Correct.
we kind of leave
Correct.
it
Yes.
kind of, we're not putting it, we're not making it like the top of the goal so that doctors say, oh, you're pregnant. Okay, I'm going to sign you up with a dietitian so that we can get everything organized, as soon as you find out that you're pregnant. We're not doing that. We kind of put
Right.
it here and there, and maybe you're eating good, but we don't really know what your life situation's like. Maybe there's some other
Right.
substance use going on or violence or whatever, and they all impact
Hmm.
on our eating, right? So we're not paying attention to all of those things as to how the whole picture comes together. We just kind of have it as a side
Yeah.
thing, like an afterthought, I'd like to call it. you know, like it kind of fits in, but we don't
Yeah.
really know where. But we know there's so
Right.
much research, right? We can fill buildings with research that has come out about the impact of nutrition in the prenatal phase. But of course, preconception is where we want to start, and then the postnatal, of course,
Hmm.
right? So I
Postnatal.
find it really frustrating because at the time when they come with me, first of all, I have to build a relationship with them. Whatever is happening in their life, they're not quick to just take you for you, right? Like they want to check you
Yeah.
out, and of course, when they hear dietitian, they have all preconceived ideas, because I'm gonna tell them what to eat. No, that's not how I work. I don't work that way, right? Like I want to know where they're at
Right.
and use what they have. So that's generally a big factor before we give them the information. That relationship building is key. And we do it ourselves. We think, okay, how much can I trust this person? Do they feel warm and fuzzy kind of thing before we take
Right.
any information
Mm.
that they say, right? Not just
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
these, for the women that we're working with or the parents that we're working with. So,
Absolutely. You're meeting them where they are, right?
yeah,
And they can, and it's a trust building. Exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
yes,
Uh, you're absolutely right. It should start in preconception. I mean, it should be a long, lifelong, we
yes,
shouldn't be just having it as little pieces here and there. It should be part of education. It should be,
yes,
part of everyday life and not just like an afterthought as
no,
it often is, right?
yes, yes,
I also know that you of course you're working with families, pregnant families, postpartum, and of course breastfeeding is a big issue. But I also learned that you are helping families transition their babies to solids, right?
hmm
And family, and how to emphasize the access to healthy food for the whole family. And I think this is really important because often what I see is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, or if it's just me that I'm who's seeing is. So we're caring for the pregnant person, for the pregnant woman, and so then we teach them about breastfeeding, and then they have the baby, they breastfeeding. If everything goes well, that's fantastic. And then there's the end, right? So we kind of,
yeah,
I feel like we're letting them down a little bit because
yes,
I think we're doing a wonderful job, or much better than we used to, of course, as healthcare providers, with breastfeeding and helping them, educating them on that. But then what comes after? It's really, there's not that much information out there, right?
no,
And
no,
I think what I would like to see is that there's just as much information and education, like what we are doing on breastfeeding, also on
hmm
then later transitioning and how can we
oh,
take this into childhood and then into adulthood. What are
yes.
your thoughts on that?
Oh, you've hit a point for me, like a nerve, so to speak, because it's my the engagements that I have recently had have all been about this thing that we call about introduction of solids. I personally
Mhm.
can't stand that term because I think because it is a new term that we've been using for the last 60 years or so. And
Yeah.
I'm very clear with the mothers I work with and the parents that I work with. I don't leave it out, I just say it. We have to move forward and change the terminology.
Mm.
We are talking about continuing breastfeeding and how do we bring in family meals.
Mm.
It's family meals. It's the industrial corporate food system that has coined the term introduction of solids. They have also made it to sound like it's a scientific process and made it
Hmm.
very complicated and also moved the agenda up. Instead of at 6 months, around the world, what do they say? Start at 4 to 6 months. And there's
Hmm.
this push to start the solids earlier and earlier. And
Hmm.
developmentally, the baby's not ready. And not only that, but the eating process takes steps to learning eat. And when we
Hmm.
bring in our introduction of solid food, we forget that. We just go straight to them eating, which is contributing to a lot of problems, but it's the agenda of the industrial
Hmm.
food system. So we have
Hmm.
to think before the advent of the food system, the baby food industry. What
Right.
we have to look at is what did we do before that happened? We brought family meals. They ate,
Right.
everybody else at the family table ate.
Right.
And that's the transition that I would like to change or bring about. So everywhere I talk, I always say it's the introduction to family meals. That's
Mm.
what it is,
I love that.
right? And they don't
That's
have to
beautiful.
make it
Yeah.
into a science. It shouldn't be onerous. It shouldn't be complicated, right? There's some
Right.
safety things, and we watch those kinds of things, but then it opens the door so nice and wide.
Mm.
It has so many positive impacts because the child is involved is eating the food that the family's eating, and the fussiness and all of that is easily deviated or taken away, like or mitigated, so to speak. But we
Mm,
have this whole issue
absolutely
with
fascinating.
fussy eaters
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
It's because there is no transition to family meals. It's like baby food, and then all of a sudden it's regular food, and it's not working. It hasn't worked for a long time, and it's
Mhm.
contributing to our healthcare crisis. That's how I feel about
That's
that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. You are right. I mean, as you mentioned, the word solids, as you can hear, English is not my first language. So when I learned that word, I thought that's a funny word, but okay, I guess. But now that you describe it, it makes perfect sense. It sounds like something almost like chemical, kind of
Mm,
scientific, kind of, this thing
yeah.
that, that, oh, you have to feed your baby because that's,
Yep.
scientifically the best thing to do, right?
Okay.
So,
Yes.
but you're right, words are powerful, and the way you explain it, that really is beautiful. So we transition to family meals. I like that. I like that very much.
I'd like
So
all
let's
documents
talk
to
about.
switch that.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just
Yes,
saying I would like
and
all
yes,
documents to say that. Anyway,
documents to
sorry
say that.
about that.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So let's talk about the presentation. Nutrition, what is it good for, and the translating guidelines to everyday practice for the perinatal years. So tell us a little bit about your presentation.
So, in my presentation, I want to take delegates on a journey to think about food from a different angle. We have the scientific information about how many grams of this and that we need to eat, like nutrients, but I want them to think about, do we eat nutrients or do we eat food? We eat food. And
Mm,
so,
mhm,
what is the common goal? And if we get to the basic, which is there's nothing special actually about healthy eating. It's just not sexy enough. But if we start to focus on certain areas to bring in those foods, we will reap the benefits. And so my goal is to highlight some of the places where we find this information or uh, um, where these gems are, they're not very far away. And if we all started to talk the same language and set the same recommendations, then we are on the path of healthy eating for our community and our population and our society. So I think that is really key. But we're faced with so much challenge between our lifestyle and between this discussion that's happening at all levels around access to food, food security, the issues around support for our mothers and all of that, that it gets lost in that process. But it's not that hard. And so, food is more than just healthy eating. There's a lot more to it, but the first step is working towards the healthy eating. And most people kind of know what healthy eating is, but I think we need to be mindful
mhm.
about the other factors that come into play.
Absolutely. Sounds wonderful. I can't wait for this presentation. I'm sure we're gonna learn a lot
Great.
there.
Thank you.
Well, Swati, thank you so much for sitting down here with me and chatting about nutrition and all the good, the wonderful things that we can learn. And we are very much looking forward to the presentation. Thank you for chatting with me here.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
And for our listeners now, then presentation nutrition, what is it good for? Translating guidelines to everyday practice for the perinatal years is a part of the nutrition lecture pack here at Gold. To find out more about this presentation and about the other presentations in the lecture pack, you can go to goldmidwifery.com and goldlearning.com. Check it out. It's a fantastic package. And we hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye bye.